Please welcome to the stage Director of Technology for AWS, Shaun Nandi.
Hi, everyone. Welcome to reInvent. Is everyone having a good start to their week? Yes? I am still blown away by Matt doing 25 announcements in 10 minutes, hitting that shot clock. This is actually my 10th year at reInvent, and it feels like a bit of a full circle moment for me. 12 years ago, I watched video of reInvent and saw the CIO of Dow Jones stand on stage and say that they were planning to move 75% of all of their workloads to the cloud. This is back in 2013. And I remember thinking, he was crazy. It's not possible. You can't move HR systems to the cloud. You can't run financial systems in Europe in the cloud. There's just no way. Skip ahead to 2 years later, my first reInvent, 2015, and I was then CIO of Dow Jones, and I started to see what was truly possible. There were less than 20,000 attendees. Everyone at reInvent was just in one place right here in the convention center. It was just one hotel back then. And there was a buzz. And I was hearing about all the workloads that everyone was moving. And now, for the last 5 years plus, we can see every workload can run in the cloud. That's not a constraint anymore. Now, today, I see a lot of parallels from 10 years ago. Today, we're living through the dawn of the agentic era. And I really feel like when we go back and think about 2025, it'll be clear that now is when business really changed. That AI revolution is really happening. Why am I so optimistic about agentic AI? Well, that video we opened with gives you a little bit of an idea. We're not all the way there yet, but if you squint just a little bit, you can see that fast approaching future where companies have hundreds or maybe thousands, or perhaps tens of thousands of agents performing really complex work and driving really significant value. I call this the agentic advantage, and it's huge. Because when we talk about results, we're not thinking about single-digit gains because some chatbot was bolted on to an existing business process. We're talking about exponential value. The type of value you don't just get from a little bit of optimization or a little bit of cost saving or a little bit of efficiency. Let me give you just a few examples. So here at Amazon, we've been harnessing agents to drive greater automation and efficiency. Earlier today, for those who attended the Amazon Innovation Talk, my colleague Dave Treadwell, who runs all of Amazon's e-commerce foundation, shared that the Amazon Stores business unit now delivers more than $2 billion in annual cost savings from AI automation and defect elimination. And our CEO has talked about how we used agents to modernize Java applications, saving 4,500 years of development time in just one set of upgrades. Not annually, just one set of upgrades, done across tens of thousands of systems. And by adopting an AI-native approach to software development, Amazon has seen the productivity of our development teams increase by a factor of 4.5. That is incredible results. But it's not just Amazon. Customers that have embraced agentic AI are also seeing exponential value. Customer service company ASAP automated 90% of their end user interactions using agents. They increased their first call resolution rate to 91%, while reducing costs by 77%. Better outcomes and lower cost, a rare twofer. You see the same thing at systems integrator Novacomp, who use agents to modernize applications. They saw a 60% reduction in technical debt, perhaps some of that stuff that was blown up down the way earlier today. And were able to modernize instances, a task that used to take them 3 weeks, they were able to do in just under an hour. And Brazilian healthcare nonprofit, No Harm, was able to boost patient capacity by a factor of 8 while saving more than $30 million per year across the hospitals they serve. These numbers, they're pretty incredible. And they're driven by agentic AI. But why? Why do agents make such a difference? And what's fundamentally different about architecting agentic applications? What is it that enables this exponential value? It's fundamentally two things. First, agentic patterns are enabling business value in a way that has been difficult to do with Gen AI up until now. When we first started, Gen AI applications had a pretty constrained set of architectures that required a ton of engineering effort to build. Fast forward to today, agentic approaches are much more flexible with a distributed system architecture. There's a lot less engineering complexity needed to have an LLM and an agent be integrated right into your business processes. Second, these new agentic patterns are translating to a much different business value calculus than we've had before. With Gen AI, there was actually a decently high barrier to entry. Integrating your data might require a lot of engineering work, so the use cases had to deliver a really good ROI. The juice had to be worth the squeeze. Today, with the evolution of what we've seen in the last year, the barrier to entry has gone way down. Whether you want to automate an entire workflow or do a lot more targeted investment, both options just don't require the same amount of time, money, or effort. And the use cases have changed. Before agents, value had to come from a simple prompt and response workflow. And the outputs of those workflows had to be differentiating enough to drive really outsized value. They had an impact, but the impact was often incremental, and it was usually limited by a human's ability to go back and forth with an LLM. Now the game's changed. The flexibility in where the automation sits and how the LLMs are incorporated into workflows is completely different. And the value delivered is exponential because agents are doing things a human being can't or won't do in the same time and capacity. These two pillars, flexible agentic AI patterns and the new math around business value that agents can unlock, set the stage for today's talk. And we have some bleeding edge customers joining us, 3 CEOs from Steady, QAD, and Pattern, who are going to share their agentic journeys. So let's dive right in. First, the architecture patterns themselves. This is where the biggest shift is happening. Traditional serverless and event-driven architectures have absolutely inspired agentic AI design. They gave us all the foundations: elasticity, scalability, and the ability to decompose complex applications into independently deployed services. These principles are just as important today as they were when we first moved to cloud. What's fundamentally different now is where the logic of a system lives. In a traditional application, we all know this, the core logic is static. It's written in code. Every conditional branch, every business rule, every exception has to be explicitly programmed by a developer. In an agentic system, that logic moves into an LLM-augmented agent. The intelligent components that can interpret context, make decisions, and act toward a goal with defined boundaries. They reason around which tools, which data to leverage. They can adapt their behavior dynamically as inputs change. That shift might sound subtle, but architecturally, it's profound. We're moving from deterministic systems, where outcomes are predefined, to systems capable of dynamic interpretation and intelligent augmentation. And we've been on this journey for a while. Cloud-native architecture patterns have been the cornerstone best practices we've all learned over the last 2 decades. You're all experts at it. They played huge roles in shaping the development of the cloud and how companies run today. Then generative AI appeared. Early on, organizations tried to harness the LLMs, but the architectures were often rigid and isolated. So you typically have a single model endpoint that could summarize text or draft a response, but it was really difficult to integrate that into an existing production system in a way that respected cloud-native design principles. Tool integration was hard. Access to enterprise data was hard. Scaling those workloads was hard. The model interaction tended to be stateless and incremental. One prompt, one response out. There's no concept of sustained context or ongoing goals. And even though the potential was enormous, we all saw that movie trailer and got really excited, it felt difficult to build Gen AI applications that looked and behaved like modern distributed systems. Those are the concepts we spent decades perfecting. Now, you could do it. We have lots of success stories, but it came with engineering complexity. This is why so many companies had early POCs that stalled before reaching production. Today, agentic approaches have changed the equation completely. Now, because models can maintain goal-driven loops, they stay focused on a complex objective across multiple steps and iterations. They retain context and memory, integrate tools natively, and operate within scalable, event-driven environments. Runtime capabilities like Bedrock Agent Core now provide a simpler, more operationally robust foundation for deploying and supervising agents in a consistent way. You can define capabilities, enforce policies, monitor behaviors, and let agents coordinate through emerging protocols rather than building your own custom APIs. These innovations have relaxed many of the constraints that made those original generative AI architectures seem so brittle. In fact, if you look closely, if you're using the right tooling, and there isn't a big difference anymore between cloud-native patterns and agentic patterns. What's really happening is the same foundational practices that all have been using to drive architectural success for decades are now being turbocharged by placing an LLM at the center of the system. And that's what's unlocking completely new levels of value creation. Now, you can understand the fundamentals of these new agentic patterns, the concepts of memory collaboration and goal-driven orchestration. It's easy to see the potential, but actually building secure, observable, and production-ready agents is a different story. Until recently, it required lots of custom plumbing for session handling, tool registries, memory stores, observability, permissions, so on, so on, so on. That's why we built Strands agents and Amazon Bedrock Agent Core to take the undifferentiated engineering lift off of your plates. Now, with Strands, you can focus on defining exactly what you want your agents to accomplish, not how to orchestrate them. Strands handles the goal-driven loop, the planning, acting, and reflecting cycles that connect your prompts, models, tools, and data services. And it abstracts away the non-functional plumbing that every enterprise needs, like security, observability, and deployment pipelines. So you can move from prototype to production with far less complexity. And we've chosen to open source Strands and make it fully available to all of you. Now, when it comes to the challenge of running those agents, even if you built the powerful orchestration layer, operating at a scale, especially in an enterprise context, can be seen to be difficult and potentially risky because autonomous systems introduce new reliability and safety considerations. That's where Amazon Bedrock Agent Core comes in. Agent Core provides a managed enterprise-grade runtime platform for agents covering IAM, session isolation, long-running workloads up to 8 hours, tool integration, memory services, support for any model and framework, now support for policy and support for evaluations as of this morning. It enforces policies and scales securely. And you have the flexibility to compose advanced agentic systems, but you can do it with the reliability, governance, and performance you always expect from AWS. Together, Strands and Agent Core remove the friction that we've all been fighting, transforming what used to take months of engineering into a set of fully manageable, composable services that you can build within hours. They let you think in the same system-level terms that all of you already know, but supercharged with reasoning and autonomy built in. Now, this is where things are today. What we're experiencing ourselves at Amazon and what we're hearing from customers. But the space is changing rapidly. And a lot of what's possible right now wasn't possible at the beginning of the year. And 12 months from now, this landscape's going to look different again. And that's what's exciting. As we continue to evolve, AWS will be here to share our learnings and experience, our approaches, and best practices to help your agentic journey. Now, two customers that are really far on their own agentic journey are healthcare technology leader Steady and manufacturing technology leader QAD. To hear more about how they're building with agents today, please welcome founder and CEO of Steady, Zach Cantor, and the CEO of QAD, Sanjay, and AWS Director of Technology, Olawale Oladin. Good to see you.
Oh, thank you so much, Sean. Very excited to get into this discussion, so thank you both for making the time. I would love to actually start with just hearing a little bit about your companies, and also how are you thinking about agentic, and highlight maybe your technologies and architectures. So Zach, I'll start with you.
Thanks for having me. Really excited about all the launches and everything so far. Steady is a healthcare clearinghouse. So we process transactions between two parties in the healthcare ecosystem, which are providers and payers. So on the provider side, that could be your local doctor, dentist. At the large scale, it could be a large academic medical center or a hospital that's in a big city. And on the payer side, you're dealing with the insurance companies, so Blue Cross Blue Shield, United Healthcare, Cigna, but there's also a long tail of thousands and thousands of regional payers and third-party administrators that we connect with. Now, to give you a tangible example, these are all related to insurance, so you go into your doctor's office, they ask for your insurance card, they tell you your copay is $20 and you have 3 visits left. That is something called a real-time eligibility check, and that's processed on Steady's rails. Now, that's kind of the happy path, that you have your valid insurance card with you. When you think about the unhappy path, you're talking about, maybe you forgot your insurance card, or maybe it's smudged out, or maybe your insurance has changed since the last time you got your insurance card, or, worst case, maybe you came in an ambulance, you don't even have your wallet with you. And in those situations, you're relying on somebody's memory and then transcription, human transcription or typing in order to get those details right. If your name is, say your name is Bill or your name is Katie, but your name is actually William or Catherine, or it's Catherine with a C instead of Catherine with a K, or I'd imagine many people have misspelled your name over the years.
Once or twice.
Yeah, you run into this problem of the insurance companies are very brittle. So by design, they don't want to return PHI for the wrong person, and so if the details are wrong, they reject the insurance check. Now, the problem there is that when that gets rejected, you have, phone calls have to be made, and so somebody will pick up the phone, or worst case, they tell the patient that they're not covered. And we publish content about how to troubleshoot these things. We have blog posts, we have docs, but the reality is that people are pretty busy and can't implement all the best practices. So what we built as our first agentic feature, we kind of have a saying, no restaurant ever went out of business for being too small. You pick the narrowest use case, which is troubleshooting these eligibility checks. We built it using Agent Core and Strands, and we built it end-to-end in 2 weeks, which I think is pretty quick. And it's a testament to a couple things. We scoped the problem down a lot, and then the technologies that were provided to us by AWS were fantastic. I think when you look at Agent Core and Strands, it's kind of exactly what you'd hope for in the primitives that you're looking for. And then we get to use all of our familiar friends to build our MCP server, like Lambda and API gateway, and deployment pipelines and all the things that we have come to love.
Fantastic, fantastic. Sanjay, I'd love to hear a little bit about QAD use case and how you use agents.
Well, first of all, thank you for having me. And I have to say, it's absolutely awesome to be here. I thought the keynote was, Matt was just fantastic, the amount of announcements. And AWS rocks, man. You guys move so fast. And I have to say, in manufacturing, we say speed is no longer a strategy. It's basically survival, right? And so this is it. If AI needs to be real, it's here. So QAD Red Zone, well, hello, everybody. I'm the new CEO of QAD Red Zone, just started in March this year. QAD Red Zone, we are $500 million in size, about 1,500 talented people, a global software company based out of Miami. And we are the #1 AI-powered manufacturing platform. And effectively, we are turning mid-market manufacturers into champions of manufacturing. And when I say mid-market, I mean $500 million to about $5 billion revenue. And our mission is we're taking manufacturing from systems of record to systems of action. And so where every employee, every machine, and every decision drives outcome, And so that's our mission. And the way we're delivering this is through our manufacturing platform, which is based on 3 pillars. So you have Red Zone, which is our connectivity workforce solution, and it's really empowering the front line. So it brings data, information, everything on iPads or Android devices right to the worker. So we cut out this whole thing of talking to supervisors and all that. At the point of work, data and intelligence is delivered. The second part is Adaptive, which is our ERP, which is focused on manufacturing. And that is, the intelligent backbone. And then the third part, which I'm so excited about, is Champion AI, and that's our agentic layer. And in fact, the way we look at it, it amplifies the human potential. So those three form our manufacturing solution. And as your question was, how are we delivering agentic AI, or how are we delivering agents? Well, we think about it in very simple three buckets. So bucket number one for us is what we call persona-based agents. We mapped out all the personas in manufacturing, right from, as I said, a shop floor worker to a supervisor to a plant manager to an inventory planner. And each of these people, they have mundane tasks today in the ERP or the systems. Nobody wakes up in the morning and goes, woohoo, I'm going to go and play with SAP, or I'm going to work on my ERP. Nobody does that, right? So there's these mundane tasks that people have, and so we've taken those away, and agents do the mundane tasks, and these people can just get on and do the high value add. It's not just high value, it's about how you increase engagement, and people get excited about working with systems. The second bucket is optimization agents. So we've chosen very difficult problems to solve. Two that I can mention is, one is inventory carrying costs, sort of the third highest cost in manufacturing, mid-market manufacturing. And this agent looks across the entire end-to-end supply chain and figures out ways to adjust the replenishment levels, and allows, obviously, the human to make the decision, but makes very precise recommendations. And the second one is, we've got a procurement agent that effectively cuts down a buyer's time by 50%. It's a dramatic reduction in their wasted time, but tremendous increase in output. And then the third bucket is implementation agents. Gone are the days where systems should take 12 months to 24 months to implement. I mean, I implemented SAP. It took ages, right? We have developed with agents and implementation methodology 90 days. Mid-sized plant should be deployed in 90 days. Simple, very clear. And agents are helping with doing that implementation through data migration, custom code move. You heard Matt Garman talk about the Transform tool. We're using AWS Transform. So look, in terms of architecture, everything's on AWS, Bedrock for models, SageMaker for kind of specific domain-specific training. We've got DynamoDB and S3 for memory,
Perfect.
and IAM and KMS for CAM for security and control.
I love it. I love it. So thank you for digging into these use cases. So I'll jump to another question, because Shaun talked about non-deterministic, goal-oriented approach. I'd love to know how you embrace that flexibility as you thought about building agents into your offerings. So Sanjay, I'll start with you.
Well, I mean, I think, I have to say people are really excited, so I don't think there is not that much of a change management issue. I've got to be honest about this. But the thing is, we have shifted from thinking about workflows to outcomes. And the idea is not about, kind of like scripting it all out. It's about setting the goals and the guardrails, and then let the agent do the work. And I think three things help. One is, kind of accepting probabilistic answers to deterministic answers, going away for kind of creating multi-step autonomy rather than single step. And then the third thing is putting the human in the loop. We are firm believers in that. To have a human in the loop where you've got to make very critical decisions, so you wouldn't change the replenishment levels without somebody really checking that. And I think when people see what agents can do, so like our procurement agent, when you run that and it addresses the messy inbox, and you can see that a buyer saves 50% time, I mean, come on. Everybody wants to save 50% time. So, that's our experience.
Fantastic, Sanjay. And I know it's great to hear your experience. Zach, at Steady, health insurance workflows are a little bit different. So how have you approached agentic design?
Yeah, look, in a regulated industry, I think there's a couple of table stakes things that you have to respect. From a security and compliance standpoint, you have to do things up to a very high degree of quality. And then from a sureness of outcome standpoint, you don't want to, I'll give you an analogy from healthcare. You don't want to have somebody operating on doing heart surgery on day one. Like you want to have them start with something very simple. Now, for us, we looked at this in a couple of different ways. I think that was one is simplifying the technical complexity of what we were working on, which AWS helps with greatly. And the second is simplifying the product complexity. So, what we're able to do if you can't sacrifice quality and security, we sacrifice scope. And so what that meant on day one was saying, look, What can we ship very quickly in single-digit days to single-digit weeks? And then what are customers going to be delighted if it works, but if it doesn't work, it's not going to have a bad outcome. So, as an example, you wouldn't want to put an agent that you're not, quite sure about on appealing denied claims, because maybe the claim is denied for a good reason, and the agent is just going to take a lot of shots on goal to make that work. So we put it towards eligibility checks. Now, in that case of somebody says their name is Will, and it turns out their name is not William, which you guessed, it's actually Wilfred. There's not a really high cost in making that mistake. So, you think about the don't be evil versus can't be evil. We started off saying we're going to choose use cases where if things go wrong, they can't go that badly. The second piece was just focusing on how we can avoid a lot of technical complexity by using the AWS tools that we get out of the box. And I think that a lot of organizations look at these things in terms of, oh, there's going to be a lot of special Snowflake things involved in agentic development. And we kind of took the approach of saying, what is going to be the same? When you look at it, it's deployed with CDK, and it's built with code build, and the APIs are behind API gateway, and it's using IAM for identity and access management, and Amazon verified permissions, and so kind of looks a whole lot like normal development. You just have to get comfortable with the pieces that are different.
Fantastic. And it's interesting, this underpinning of what can you take that you've learned, kind of lessons learned that can be applied, and then also around security and governance and how you think about that to move really quickly. So Zach, I'd actually love to kind of double click on how you have thought about security and governance in your agentic design.
Yeah, very similar to how we kind of think about everything. As we say, first we want to make sure that it's starting from a principle of least privilege. I think that's something that gets talked about every year, and everybody should have that top of mind. But just making sure that the agent doesn't have access to the vast majority of the tools that are could be accessible to it. So Steady is an API first platform. Now, I'll draw a distinction between that and an API-only platform. So we have many features that are available through our user interface, but an API-first platform is a platform where anything that can be done through the user interface can be done via API or SDK. And so I would say that AWS in that way is an API-first platform, where sure you can do a lot of things through the console, but hopefully you can do all those things via API as well. And so, starting from there, we use all of the controls that we have out of the box from AVP and IAM to say, okay, these are the ways that we control access to our APIs. We give the agent only the access that it needs, and there's great integrations available there. And from there, we're layering in things like the Bedrock guardrails and making sure that there's appropriate guardrails on what the agent is and is not allowed to do, and what sort of prompts that we're expecting from customers.
Fantastic. And I think, Sanjay, you have a different kind of segment in manufacturing. I'd love to hear how QAD approaches security and compliance.
Yeah, all the things that Zach said are all relevant because, our clients, they are also operating in highly regulated environments. So the verticals that we focus on are automotive, food and beverage, life sciences. These are all areas where, there is a lot of regulations that you have to follow. And so, first of all, for us, security by design, very clear. And so when we designed Champion AI, it was, basically wasn't that we design in such a way that autonomy doesn't increase while control decreases. So it's pretty clear that, and then, all the standard, kind of the controls, or let's say the checks from AWS, they are in place, those guardrails are there. So, IAM, full audit trail, KMS, and just making sure that our customers' data is very important, and you need to give customers that assurance that their data is not being used to train the model, and so that assurance, and then finally, I think the big point is what Matt put up, also saying trust but verify, and so very clear, put the human in the loop, and those kind of things, very important from a perspective of ensuring governance and control. So.
Fantastic. It's great to hear those underpinnings, those same best practices coming back again and again. We're right at the end, so I'd love to close with a question for each of you. How are you measuring success of these agentic initiatives today? And as you think about the evolution of agents, how do you see that evolution evolving in the future? So Sanjay, we'll start with you.
Well, in manufacturing, it's quite simple. We look at very clear metrics. It says OEE, or it's throughput, it's downtime, it's cost. So everything has to be tied into specific measures in manufacturing. And so I give an example. Red Zone is deployed in 1,700 plants globally. We have 650,000 users that use it on a daily basis, make decisions. But what we do is we measure production runs. There's 6 million runs that we measure, and effectively we have 26% productivity measured through agents being deployed. We have 81% more engagement on the shop floor, and we have 35% reduction in attrition. And so this is measured, literally specifically with the production runs. And then on the ERP side, just specific things like the inventory agent is measured on the reduction of the inventory carrying costs. And so we've done it with clients now. We've been able to record up to 30% reduction in the inventory carrying costs. And the procurement agent basically cuts down buyer time by 50%. Again, it's a way to look at, either you look at how you're increasing output or you're reducing costs. Very simple in manufacturing.
Fantastic. Top line and bottom line.
Absolutely.
So, Zach, love to hear how you're at Steady thinking about success and then the evolution of agents.
Yeah, on the success standpoint, we were pretty astounded at the results. So we look at it on two dimensions, which is how often are customers using this, and almost a third of our customers are using it every week, which is a pretty shocking number. Now, it's shocking to us because when we looked at the number of people who were performing follow-up troubleshooting checks, it was in the single-digit percentage. So it was a very, very small number of people who were following the best practices, as I think everybody is probably not surprised by that. So yeah, almost a third. And then when you look at the resolution rate, it's again almost a third of the eligibility checks are successful. And so what that means in practice is that for every 10 instances that you look at, we're avoiding 3 phone calls, which is or 3 people being denied care and saying that they're going to have to pay out of pocket, and then all the headache that comes from trying to reconcile those things afterwards. We started small, but we like to start small and then expand from there. We built the agent in a pluggable, modular way so that it could easily be plugged into other parts of the platform. And so it is not an eligibility troubleshooting agent. It is an agent that has an eligibility troubleshooting tool that's available to it. Since then, we've launched payer selection. And so you might wonder, how hard is it to choose the right insurance company? But Blue Cross Blue Shield has something like 33 different entities that it represents. And then within that, there's a lot of further complexity in terms of it's a federal employee or versus a commercial versus Medicare or Medicare Advantage. And so we expanded into payer selection, and you can see this will just move further and further out into the platform to things like claims and rejections, denials, various sorts of resubmissions, and then what we're most excited about is what our customers build with this. So we have hundreds of companies who build AI-driven revenue cycle management workflows on top of our platform, and many of them have asked, Steady is an API-driven platform, can we use the agent via API? And so there's an exploration there for us to figure out what exactly does invoking an agent from another agent look like, and these are hot topics today.
Fantastic. I really appreciate the time today and just sharing your insights with the audience. So we will hand it back to Shyam, but thank you again, Zach and Sanjay.
Thanks for having us.
My pleasure.
Thank you.
Thank you so much, Zach, Sanjay, and Olawale. That was a lot of incredible outcomes from agentic. Okay, so now you've got an agent-ready architecture in place. It's time to talk about taking advantage of it. And when we talk about agentic value, we're not talking about marginal efficiency. We're no longer limited to those single prompt and response workflows I mentioned earlier that drive such incremental improvements. We're talking about orders of magnitude of value, faster decisions, shorter cycles, higher quality, and dramatically better utilization of both human and machine effort. And agents are what make this possible. First, agents accelerate execution. In traditional workflows, every step depends on handoffs, a signal from one system, one team, or often one person to another. This creates lots of idle time everywhere and room for error. Agents collapse these gaps. They plan multiple steps ahead, prefetch context, and trigger downstream actions as soon as conditions are met. They're inherently asynchronous, coordinating and executing work in parallel instead of serially. This translates into much shorter cycle times, higher throughput, and far greater responsiveness to change. This is why they can pull multiple insurance providers at the same time, like you heard from Steady, or shrink ERP migrations from years to weeks, like you heard from QAD. Second, agentic systems bring adaptive orchestration and decisioning. Traditional automation works from predefined rules or workflows. If X, then do Y. Agents work from intent. They can branch and explore alternative paths, test hypotheses, and converge on the best plan, all while staying within the boundaries you set. You're not hard-coding decisions anymore. You're teaching your architecture how to reason about those decisions dynamically. Now, third, agentic architectures embed quality and resilience directly into the runtime. In the traditional world, quality assurance happens after the fact. Testing and validation is serial. It comes once the change has been made, pretty late. In an agentic system, these checks happen as the work is performed. Agents can validate those intermediate results, self-correct, and document provenance automatically. They can retry failed steps intelligently, simulate alternative plans, and even escalate if confidence falls below an expected threshold. And finally, agents have scalable reach and persistent memory. They can pull context across those painful data silos you have in a business, across formats, across languages even. They can reason over structured data, text, images, or telemetry, and unify it all into a single decision flow. More importantly, they remember. They retain what worked, what failed, and what improved the outcome. And over time, that memory that agents can have, it can compound. It allows the system to get smarter, not because the underlying model is changing, but because the system as a whole has learned from its own operations. That's how you see compounding returns, the kind of learning loops that continuously drive down cost while driving up quality and speed. We opened up today with a look at the art of the possible, that fun orchestra picture, thousands of agents working in concert to complete complex tasks. How are we going to get there? Baby steps. Today, we're moving from an LLM-assisted workflow that maybe gives you 5 to 15% efficiency gains to agentic workflows like this one that accelerate outcomes and lower your costs. It starts with incorporating agents in discrete parts of a business process to augment and improve work. Over time, it expands to more agents handling different parts of the process. And eventually, we expect processes that are fully agentic, able to deliver extraordinary results, much lower costs, and much faster cycle times. Sounds unreasonable? It's not. I'm already seeing it today from our bleeding edge customers. And if you attended the Amazon Innovation Talk earlier, you heard that we've deployed more than 20,000 agents across our own business since July to automate a huge variety of workflows. This is where the industry is going. Now, one way that every business can benefit from agents right now is with engineering development. Dave Treadwell this morning talked about the speed AI native development is unlocking for Amazon, where agents are fundamentally transforming the way we build. In an AI native model, agents don't just generate code, they orchestrate the entire lifecycle, bringing product people, security people, operations and engineers together in real time. Instead of siloed teams discovering issues as development progresses, agents surface those trade-offs early, mediate decisions, and keep everyone aligned so the system evolves holistically from the start. That's the real breakthrough. Agents turn software development from a series of disconnected handoffs into a continuously collaborative, intelligence-driven process. Customers adopting AI native development processes are achieving extraordinary results. IT services company Wipro developed a production-ready enterprise healthcare platform in just 20 hours' time, leveraging domain-driven design. And trading platform Dawn originally scoped 2 months to build new capabilities, but by adopting our AI native practices and they developed those capabilities in 48 hours. That's truly incredible. Beyond development, we see a lot of powerful agentic use cases specific to every industry. Whether it's telecom giant Ericsson using Bedrock Agent Core to drive double-digit productivity gains in R&D, or Honda using Agent Core to speed production of its autonomous driving technology. That's in addition to what you just heard from Steady and QAD. Now, another great industry example is our next speaker from e-commerce company Pattern. Pattern has reimagined business processes with agents at the core to drive significant results. To share more, please welcome the CEO of Pattern, Dave Wright, and our leader of technology in Europe, Melanie McRory.
So, Dave, welcome.
Thank you.
Very much for being here. You started in 2013, and you've come a long way since then. You're now the #1 seller on Amazon Marketplace. Tell us a little bit about Pattern and a bit of background about how you got there.
Yeah, it's a fun story, actually. I had a so where Pattern fits in the ecosystem is we help brands across 60 marketplaces globally using our Pattern intelligence layer. So they leverage our technology layer to help them sell and drive results across all marketplaces globally. Of course, Amazon is one of them. It started, I had a cousin, and she had created this little girl's headband brand, and sitting there going through spread. My background is all in the tech data science side. So I'd never sold a widget, never done any marketing. Matter of fact, most of those things sort of bothered me. And she was started talking about marketing and some terms I'd never heard of, like ROAS. And it was intriguing from a data perspective. So one night, jumping through, going through spreadsheets, and next thing you know, I was like, we started helping a few other brands, and now we have Pattern, and we just finally made it through the going public process. I wouldn't recommend it to anybody.
Click on. And like Amazon, we spoke earlier about the fact that you work backwards from the outcome that you're trying to generate. Can you tell us a little bit about one of the problems that you're trying to solve for?
Yeah, it's been a really fun journey. I'll give you one example, as you can see on the slide here. I was meeting with a brand called U-Theory. You may have heard of it. It's owned by Jameson up in Canada. And I was meeting with their board because they're spending about 19% of total revenue on ads. And they're growing nicely. And I tried to tell them, I was like, you have a core problem. When people go to your products, they convert 10.4% of the time. But your competitive set of products, they convert 16% of the time, 16.7. And we were stripping out all branded. This is a very like-for-like number. And I was like, so your growth is severely limited by this fact. So, of course, it's a very complex problem to try to figure out, okay, what are we doing wrong? Is the U-Theory branding itself flawed? Is the product flawed? Is the messaging flawed? What could we do? And because it's so complex, and then you start thinking globally, this is not just a brand that wants to sell in the US, and they don't just want to sell on Amazon, they want to sell globally. So this became a problem that we solved leveraging agents. So what we have built, and this is just, I didn't imagine in 2013 that this would be possible. I mean, we have 29 patents either issued or pending on the tech stack itself. But what we do is we said, anytime you have a data-rich environment where you have the ability to create a sensor like this, so, okay, -6 conversion to competitor, that'd be a sensor. Okay, so now I've triggered a sensor, so now I need to go and collect information. So we have an information collection agent that will go and interrogate the web and interrogate all the sources, pull in data and say, okay, this is what I'm working with. Now we say, what are all my competitors doing? So that'd be your shelf, because obviously they're beating me by 6 points. So now let's analyze what they're doing, information collection again, put this together into a strategy. And then we start saying, okay, we need to be faster at generating product photography. So in this case, once you've interrogated the web and you've pulled the images in, we need to be able to do AI-generated product photography. But if the image quality wasn't good enough, we actually built a piece of hardware here so you can see our robotic arm. We call this the portal. And it's on the left there. And so we will actually shoot product photography, and you can see our turnstile table. We've got a motor in there. We've had a lot of fun with this. Those are just LED screens where we'll actually train a LoRa model on a lot of different shots from the same angles. We'll do hundreds of shots inside that portal, and then we're able to do AI-generated product photography. But then you can use an agent to audit it. So then it can go back through and you can say, okay, here's a brand style guide. Here's some things that you can and can't say. Here's the actual dosage from their PIM. And then we can air check it using an agent. I mean, all of these things, and then if we get some part of that image wrong, we could regenerate, not the whole thing, we could regenerate parts of it using a content creation agent. So, this has resulted in some great results for youth area.
That's really good to hear. And agents for you, that's been a game changer in terms of then what you can deliver out to your customers. Xiao mentioned about that accelerated outcome, and this is really a great example of that. And if we then look at the got a technical audience here, and I'm sure we're all itching to know a little bit about some of the architecture that you use in order to be able to solve the problems such as this. Can you tell us a little bit about that architecture?
Yeah, of course. I'm sure most of you are pretty familiar with, I've got the slide up here with the high level on the architecture, but a couple points that I think are interesting. In the old world, if of a non-agentic workflow, you start with an input, you have an output, and you have step 1, 2, 3, 4. In an agentic workflow, between steps 1 and 2, I can now make a decision on exactly where I go, leveraging a set of data that we might have. So you can see we have PXM there. So I can query an internal information system that we might have and data and feed that into a model. And then I can go on, and then I can let an agent make a decision as to whether I go on from 2 to 3 to 4, or I skip 3 altogether. And then we also have long-term and short-term memory. So in that process, we can remember what was done before and what might be more impactful. I mean, I've been involved in tech my whole life, and I actually never thought we would be able to break this type of barrier in terms of just efficiency and speed. And we've added a few things on here that are non-Amazon, and Amazon let us, so thank you for everyone. But I'm sure we're all using products that are Amazon and non-Amazon. And the great thing I think about the core, the bedrock, the foundation that Amazon has built is it does allow, for the most part, full interoperability with other systems.
Yeah. So in a sense, it makes it seamless to blend it all together, and enables your team to be able to deliver what is needed. And when you apply the architecture, and you're thinking about the solutions that you're trying to generate, give us an example of maybe some of the results that you've seen from this.
Yeah. When we put this slide together, I think the Amazon team came back and they're like, so you only went from 15% conversion to 17%. And I was like, that's a massive number. This is across the pattern portfolio as a whole, 100,000 SKUs, 60 marketplaces globally, all running through these agentic flows, and a 2% increase in conversion. And that's not just linear math. If you think of if we're a brand, revenue is essentially traffic times conversion times price. So you would think it would be linear, but if you can increase conversion, it's circular, you'll increase traffic as well. So that becomes a massively impactful number. And then, of course, just the reduction in the time. We used to rent houses so that we could do photography of a bottle of supplements in a bathroom and then in a kitchen and so, everywhere else. So now, not reduction in time, reduction in cost, it's, completely changed the game for us.
Yeah. Well, we would say you may be a little bit scrappy, but scrappy works because you are a huge success story. And, can you give us an example of something that you've generated?
Well, the U-Theory product is actually collagen. Its main use is for, that people latch onto it is for, really good hair, young skin. So, yes, we have.
Yeah, I think, that's a little bit, shall we say, artistic license.
Yeah, we took a little bit.
Yeah, I really like that one. And when you're building workflows with agents at the center to drive the results that you want, what are the couple of things that you've learned that you would give us some examples for builders to take away from them? What are the one or two things that you would recommend to all of us here today?
Yeah, maybe a couple things. If this becomes a people game, I think we talk a lot about the technology, but it's always people who are implementing it. And I see companies out there and they're like, okay, we're going to do a reduction in force because of AI. We're completely the opposite. We're increasing our technology budget faster than we ever have in 13-year history. And we're somewhat obsessed about paying the highest prices. So I think that companies are somewhat delusional if they think they're going to come in at, right at where, they pull up the salary chart and they say, okay, what's the average pay for an AI engineer, whatever. If that's what you're paying, that's probably what you're getting. Every company I talk to, they're like, oh, we hire the best. But statistically, are you really going to be hiring the best if you pay bottom, quartile versus top quartile? So I think that is something, in the next 2 or 3 years, the companies that don't figure that piece out, I think they are going to get left vastly behind. Because the speed, we're talking 96% reduction in just doing photo shoots and whatnot. I think that will be key. And then there will be just leaders you'll see that are historically probably great leaders. I had one executive who I thought was a phenomenal leader, but I just couldn't get him into the technology. It was almost like, hey, don't you love pizza? And he's like, no, I want to do something else. This is now a game where if your leaders are not into and just completely immersed in AI and the technology and the benefits, they will get left behind, and you probably need to go in a different direction, or you'll lose. So I'll probably just say at the end, this just becomes a people game.
Okay, and when we think about people, can you tell us maybe a little bit about how you created that image of Shaun? We'd love to hear a little bit more about it. What did you do?
Well, you saw the portal. So first you can see the bottle of collagen. Once we shot that in the portal, so you saw that robotic arm. So it'll take hundreds of images from different angles, and and then once we have that right, then we'll audit that bottle. The bottle of collagen. You can see that little molecule right there. They call that a molecule. That's very, very difficult to do. And if you run that through like a Gemini or OpenAI without being portal enhanced, so sometimes there's just not enough good imagery out there, so you actually have to shoot it yourself. So we did that, and then we just layered in Shaun hair, and we didn't even enhance his hair or anything.
Okay. We'll talk about that later. What about how have you approached where to deploy agents? What from your perspective? How do you know which use cases would deliver the most value?
Well, I would say something I probably have never thought I would say is it's almost like a level of creativity. If you know, you can use a standard workflow if you're like, here's my input, here's my output. But if you have a really good idea of what the output ought to be, but the solution in getting there can be variable and creative, that is a perfect spot, I think, for an agentic workflow. So you're very clear about the outcome, but the way you get there and the data that feeds the input can be creative. And if data can influence that output, then an agentic workflow becomes I think, the foundation for success in the future.
Okay, yeah. So I would just left to say thank you very much for being here on stage. We heard a lot from Shaun about how people are using, other companies are using agents today, how they're accelerating business outcomes. And with that, we're going to hand back to Shaun to take us home and tell us, wrap up a little bit more about agentic. So thanks very much, Dave, for joining us on stage today.
You bet. You bet. Thanks for having me.
Thanks, Dave and Melanie. And first, for the streamed audience out there, especially my wife, check the bathroom, Angela. There's no collagen. That was AI generated, if there's any confusion. We are at a major inflection point in technology, and the agentic advantage is real. Agents are turbocharging operational agility and unlocking extraordinary business value. To realize your own agentic advantage, AWS is the best place to build and deploy trusted and performant agents anywhere in the world. I told you about everything we can do today with Bedrock agents to run them in production safely, securely, and scalably. And we saw tons of new capabilities announced today, including, of course, evaluations and policy. Even beyond Agent Core, we have so much for you, everything you need. Whether it's ready-to-use agentic applications like Hero for software dev, our new security and DevOps agents, Transform to accelerate migrations, Connect to give your customers the best experience possible, or Quick to be the best teammate for your employees. And we support the most popular frameworks for building, including open source capabilities like our own Strands agents. And we have the broadest set of model choices in Bedrock, including all the new models you heard Matt announce this morning, and our own family of the new Nova 2 models, and the very best ML infrastructure with SageMaker, including our new Nova Forge, our capabilities for customers to build their own frontier AI models through an open training approach. And not least, we have our purpose-built silicon for AI training and inference, including not just the latest NVIDIA-based powered P6s, but also our new Trainium 3 Ultra servers. Do not miss Swami and Dave's keynotes this week to hear what else is coming. Now, it's been 10 years since my first reInvent. And back then, I couldn't imagine the changes that cloud would bring to business. I saw firsthand how enterprises were first disrupted and then accelerated by the power of building in the cloud. And we're there again with agents. We're starting to realize that agents are going to be engaged in every business process, every workflow, and every system. They are becoming foundational. And it's going to change how we all work for the better. It might sound unbelievable, but if history is a lesson, it's going to happen. With that, I want to thank our incredible customer speakers, my colleagues, Melanie and Olawale, and I want to thank all of you for taking the time to join us. Please go check out more great sessions, have a great term learning, and have a great reInvent. Thank you.